Welcome to the 151st episode of the Solid Station Podcast with your host, Nat from Nap's Naughty Works LLC, Nick from MPG Creations, and Josh from North Country Woodworking. We got a pretty good episode for you tonight. If you remember last episode, we did a how-to on some lightburn stuff. Well, we're going to stick with the theme, and later on through the episode, Josh is going to go ahead and give you all his how-to on lightburn, whatever subject he decides to choose. Bit of a surprise because he hasn't even told me what he's going to do it on yet. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and jump on into what's going on in the shops. So, Nick, other than being super busy, homie, what jobs and what do you got going on in the shop?
Hey, so I finished a job of two large plaques that have hanging placards from them, and there's also little arms that come down that hold a guidon. If you don't know what a guidon is, it's just a flag with a pole. And I finished them. I pulled an all-nighter on Sunday night. And when I say all-nighter, I went from working in the daytime, and moving it into the nighttime. My neighbors came over and drank while I was working. And I was just still in the shop while they were drinking. And I was like, man, it sure would be nice to have some frosty beverages, but I couldn't do it. So I ended up making it till like midnight, and I'm like, yeah, this is not going to happen if I don't keep going. So I stopped working, put the final coat of oil on at 5:45 in the morning.
Oh, Jesus.
At which time I woke the children up, got them ready for school, got myself ready for work, and I put the projects in the back of my truck nice and carefully, right? But some D-bag pulled out in front of me, so I had to slam the brakes on, and the arms broke off of one of the projects. And I was just so slap happy at that moment. I'm like, this is fine. Whatever, man.
You're like the little dog in the burning room, like, oh, this is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, man. There was a ton of work for that one particular project. And I had started it. So I screwed myself over. I started it a few days earlier, and there was a lot of etch work done on it with the laser. And I Oramasked it and I spray painted it, but the spray paint bled all over the place. And I was like, oh no. So I went to sand it, and it was in the wood.
You didn't seal it before you put the Oramask.
Yeah, so that was my mistake. I didn't seal the wood first. I should have sealed the wood first. So if you're ever doing this again, Nick, seal the wood first. So what did I do?
His tip.
I weighed out my options. I had I had to frame out the problem. So my stated problem was that this project was due tomorrow, and I had not made essentially anything for it at this point. So what's the fastest way possible? So then I went and framed it out, thinking maybe I could go ahead and rerun the laser, which would have taken forever. I could have on another line, I could have used the CNC, which would have been a lot faster and just stock removal. So that's what I ended up doing. I realized that the time that it would have taken me to redo the laser, I still would have been working at 5:45. So I ended up running the CNC machine, same file and everything. I made the letters and stuff like that big enough to where I didn't have to do a finishing pass. I used an 1/8 inch bit, and it came out pretty good, an 1/8 inch downcut bit. And then what I did was I filled the letters with acrylic paint. Now, acrylic paint doesn't bleed into the wood like spray paint does. So once you put acrylic paint on, it hardens, solidifies after it dries, and then you sand the surface, and whatever's on the surface comes right off. And from then, I built the frames around it and everything like that. And I had pretty much everything else I was working on while the CNC was going. So just had to bear down and do it. Tuesday, when I came home from working a over 24 hours day from the previous night and day, I went to bed and I didn't wake up until today. I was exhausted, man. There was nothing else to do.
You don't say. The last time you probably did something like that was when you were flying. So
was what?
Probably when you were flying.
No, last time I did something like that, irresponsibly like that and just stayed up for like over 24 hours straight was in the dorms when I was in the barracks at Charleston, and I met a girl and we just stayed up all night.
I see.
Talking.
And then I went to work.
Talking.
Yeah.
They had really good, deep conversation.
I don't know about deep.
All right. Anyway, other than that, though, I am currently working on a project for people in my own unit right now, which is odd because I don't typically do stuff for people in my own unit. But I guess when everybody else leaves the area, like, Nick Coffey's leaving, John Davis left, Knapp left. So they're just cutting down the competition. The Air Force is PCS and everybody out. Whatever. It's not really. I don't really consider it competition because I work hand in hand with. I've worked side by side with Knapp on projects, and I work with Coffee. I'm actually running some glass tonight for Coffee.
Yeah, I heard it on the phone that day. Yeah,
that's so easy. Like the glass work is so easy because it's just flat panels, and you really don't need to monitor it. You're not going to start a fire for one, and
if there's a will, there's a way.
Well, so you're running at such low temperature, and it's not really. I mean, the odds of that happening. Obviously, you could have a freak accident, right? But the odds of it happening is like I'll just put a camera on it and I'll go watch TV and stuff like that. I obviously have some more stuff to do before then, but if it gets to like midnight, I'm calling it and I'm going to leave the camera on. I'm going to go lay down and watch TV while it finishes up. Other than that, though, I talked to Joey Steelblade this week. Joey, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but they started their own podcast. It's fantastic, too. It really is. If you haven't checked it out, check them out. So these guys essentially did what Josh and AJ did, was they did a bunch of Instagram lives all the time. And like, you know what? If we're doing this, we might as well just come out with a podcast and keep it recorded and see if we can get some traction. So
I mean, they got great people on that podcast, too. It's worth listening.
They got Jen from Jen's Turn. She's on there. Joey obviously is on there. You got Matt Wackerly on there from Wacky Works.
Yeah.
You got JP from JP Woodwork, and then you got Jake from Jake_Thompson 670. He does the Saturday morning cartoons with his epoxy work and stuff like that. They're a super awesome crew. They definitely have a lot of fun, like little clips and stuff in there. I know they use, I forget what they use. It's like a open source web broadcasting, and they're able to like do a bunch of different things with it, which is pretty awesome. So I'm looking.
It's been interesting how they do it too. If you haven't watched them, you can go and check them out on YouTube as well. And like they've been having each host take the center stage, and essentially they'll ask them questions and whatnot. And then it's interesting. You can ask them live questions as they're going, and it's been fun. It's been a really fun podcast to watch. So do a good job.
If you guys tune in on the 28th of June, yours truly will be on, and it's going to be a real banger. Just saying. Yeah. So I'm going to be on. So check it out. Just saying. Anyway, not yours truly woodworking, because that is a shop. Anyway, that's all I got going on in the shop, other than just being, my other busybody self. But Josh, what do you got going on in your shop?
So this will be the last shop I'm actually woodworking, or the last week I'm actually woodworking. Last shop, hopefully not. So I am trying to finish up quite a few projects actually. All my the go-to people are hitting me up for last minute plaques, and thankfully, for the most part, they are quick and I can knock them out. This week, I knocked out a couple coin holders, set of 7-level wings for a senior, acrylic walnut coin holder for a Marine, and then I'll fuck around and find out security sign for a local here. I did like 3 or 4 of those during Christmas, and then they liked them so much they wanted one for a Father's Day gift, so they ordered one. So fairly easy stuff. And then I got this 24 by 15 inch clock plaque I'll be doing here this week. I have a Chief Security Force Navy plaque I'll be doing last minute for them. Ben Warren has been helping me out with the file to get set up because I'm actually doing a 3D carve of their badge and put it on some cherry. And hopefully it's going to turn out pretty good. I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. It's going to be my first 3D carve I'm actually giving out as a plaque or anything like that. With his guidance, and I'm sure I'll be hitting up Nap as well for some of his experience. We're going to get her done. I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be something that the CNC is going to be going, and I actually get to do a little bit of that 3D carve. And that's going to be something that I'm going to try to include up and coming. So I wanted to get it into my Instagram and my website and everything. So when I get back in the shop in my next space, I can advertise it. I can do as such. So that's exciting for me. I can't wait to see how that comes out. I'll be doing my first paddle. That's actually for a neighbor. Military working dog handler is actually moving on, doing a different duty. And he really liked one of the Navy paddles. And we're going to do a mock-up like that for him. And then I have a small, 20 by 20 square shadow box I'm knocking out for a POL troop, a field troop, if you don't know what that is. And then finishing up the retirement truck. So hopefully this will all be done before the 23rd is the goal. And that'll be the last of my jobs. Any outstanding invoices have been canceled and the client's been contacted with, I'm sorry, but you had months to pay these and you haven't, you got to find someone else. Here are some names, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. One of them, they might get a hold of me, but they got to pay for shipping now. So we'll see how that goes. I hit up MakerStock and ordered some acrylic for the Glock. That basically was almost overnighted. I got it the next day. It was great. I can't wait to start working with that. We can hear you, Nick.
Well, they're right there in Pennsylvania, so it's not too far from
you. They're about 2 hours away. But still, it's always impressive when a company takes your order and they get it to you the next day. So I was pretty happy with that. Obviously their packaging, everything came, intact and ready to go. It's just nice. If you haven't checked out their website, go check them out. You can get your acrylics and stuff like that to, all the sizes you're going to need it. They cut it down to size or, give you the full sheets, whatever you order. So it's worth checking out. And then we have a promo code for that too. You can check out in our mentions. If you're listening to the podcast. So along with all that, basically, I'm going to hit the shop pretty hard this week, get those knocked out. The retirement truck, I am aiming to have as the last project leaving the shop. Not only because it's the biggest one, but because I want that to be my last project here. Don't ask me why. It's for a flight engineer. He was a good chief, and he really measured up to everyone around him. So, yeah. Okay, so moving on with that. I'll be packing the shop up next week. As much as I can, basically putting things in toolboxes, preparing, going through drawers, make sure I get everything I need, dismantling the CNC station, getting that basically scrap wood out. Any kind of wood I'm not going to be using will be, sold or given away to, woodworkers or whoever might want it. I've already started giving some things away to local makers just because, that's what we do. You can't always ask for people to buy this stuff. And if it's going to help them, then that's just better for it. And then start cleaning up the shop a little bit, try to push everything that, is on wheels, which everything is, to one side, make room for the wife and the boxes that she's going to be filling when I'm at school. But it's been hard to say no to some orders. The smaller orders I've been saying yes to just because, the chief one was a last minute one and it just kind of filled that void of wanting to do that 3D carve and get one last one in. And then some of the other ones were like when they asked me to do one for my neighbor. I've had great neighbors. These guys have allowed me to plug into their outside outlet, use the laser. They don't complain at all about the noise or anything. So, if anything, they tell me they don't hear anything, which is a kind lie. They have to hear it. But when you have great neighbors like that, I just can't say no. And then the shadow box, it's a quick square shadow box. I like doing them. I don't get to do many of the square ones. Usually it's the the chevron one. So, but other than that, I've been driving around looking for little pieces of wood to go ahead and use the lathe with. I'm thinking about taking it with me, putting it in the back of the truck, and just go to town on that bad boy when I'm at school in the parking lot. See how much they love it. Yeah, I'm going to be hanging out with Nick. He's going to be taking off on some vacations. I'll be trying to see some.
That moved to time frames too. So I'll
okay.
update you guys.
And then I'll be trying to meet up with some other makers in Texas. Obviously, I'll be doing a little bit of traveling to do that, but I'll be down there for I don't know, I'm guessing around 5 days without class due to the holiday. So, well, we're going to go meet some other makers and make the most of the time. But yeah, other than that, time is dwindling down. I only have this in the next podcast before I'll be on the road doing the podcast and then finally in Texas. So yeah, it's coming quick, a lot quicker than I thought it would, but time flies. So that's about it.
I do that too, Josh. I'm just saying.
Well, time flies.
No, I come quick.
That actually explains a lot.
Oh, patrons, you're getting your money's worth tonight.
Excuse me. There's some interesting comments going on in there. Yeah, no last minute orders and making gifts for Nick. Excuse me. Turning, not making. Anyway, passing it over to Nap to see what's going on in his shop.
Well, so this weekend I started 8 jobs. More so paneling, because paneling tends to be one of the more time-consuming operations in any shop when it comes to making larger projects. Let's see. So I paneled up for a hat press that's going to San Antonio. This one's a little different than some of the hat presses I've made in the past. It's relatively simple. However, they like the way I make the shadow boxes with like the raised stripes and things like that. So I'm going to be doing a Master Sergeant chevron on the bottom left corner of it with raised walnut lettering or walnut pieces. And then his name will be the same. And then I'm going to do a 3D carve on a trauma care emblem for medical. And I'm going to inlay that as well into the bottom right portion of the hat press. And then the rest is honestly the same. You got the felt, the cutout for the hat, the rope holes, and all that stuff like that. So that's what's going to be for that hat press. I haven't started doing much else beyond paneling because there's no real time constraint, but I'm trying to get it done this month just so it's off the plate. Hat stand to do. That one is not going to be too bad of a build. The only part is the rings and the epoxy lettering and the puck and whatnot. That won't take too long, but that's more or less just a process to put together, just making sure everything's square, everything's measured correctly. Because if the legs that hold the portion where the hat goes on are uneven, it just looks wonky. So I got to make sure all that's good to go. But then also doing the inserts. So instead of gluing the legs in, I'm going to be adding those threaded inserts in the bottom so they can unscrew the bottom and pull the legs off, as well as the inserts for the top portion. So that'll be pretty interesting, to say the least, because I want it to come apart in 3 different pieces so that way they can take it apart, flat pack it, and send it on its way so it doesn't get damaged in shipping. I have 2 interesting going aways. One is for my boss. He's leaving and headed up to even more north, like northwest, over there in Alaska. So he's trading one cold place for another. So that's pretty cool. Then my other chief, who runs weapons right now, he's headed on down to Dias. So I'm making them the same gift. This is different because we have certain pieces of equipment that when they go bad, you send them to a place where they get demilled. So I was able to acquire certain things. And I will say that they are World War II era. They've probably been around longer than we've been alive, which is pretty dope because, the B-52 has been bringing the pain for quite some time. So I get to mount 2 of these things on a framed plaque. It'll have some custom laser engravings specific to them. It'll be on a maple backer, have the walnut framing. And it's something simple, but something nice because it's not something typical most weapons folks will get. Typically, they'll get like, if they're in the fighter world, they'll get like a barrel mounted on a plaque. Or like you see from Metal Tuition, he makes like the spinning rotary mounts for the guns, the gun barrels that he has, which I thought are pretty cool. But this is not quite like that. It's a little bit smaller, obviously, but I'm making 2 of those. And then I got a PCA gift. We had an airman leave arm shot. He headed out to the flight line. And one thing we're trying to show the guys is that no matter what, when you leave, you get something. It may not be something completely extravagant, but it's something to show like our appreciation for their hard work that they did within arm shot. And then I have another set of those stripes with the glow-in-the-dark epoxy that I'm doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about this one because it has to do with lasers and some things, not necessarily that I learned, but it just kind of reaffirmed like preventative maintenance, but as well as like checking certain things. So I went for the patrons. You guys will see that I'm holding up the engraved Tech Sergeant stripes. I learned that your mirrors can come loose after an extended period of time of use. I didn't realize it was the mirrors until today because I had gotten it realigned thinking it was my alignment and it had finished the etching. However, I can tell that some portions of this etching are a little deeper than others. It is walnut, Jason. So it was going uneven. I'm like, what the heck is going on with this? So I still didn't know what it was, but it was still cutting fine. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll go ahead and run the next job. So then I ran the next job.
Hey, so go ahead. I'll ask you when you're done.
So I went and ran the next job. Okay. And it's one of these. So I made one of these out of mahogany a little while back. I'm in the middle of making this one out of cherry. But I noticed on this one, it did the same thing towards the top of this logo right here, where it didn't engrave as deep. It was kind of light. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Then I reran it and it was fine. Well, then I went to my logo on the back and it engraved the bottom portion. It engraved the Naps Naughty Works piece, but then it started to go here and then got really light as it went up here and then didn't even engrave the established portion on here. So I'm like, okay, this is absolutely effing annoying. What is happening? So I started looking at my mirrors again, started looking at alignment, and I noticed when I was messing around with my mirror 2, getting ready to like move it around, I noticed that the red laser pointer that bounces off the mirror was moving without really me doing anything. And I was like, what in the hell? So I checked the ring on the back of my mirror, and it was loose. It was loose just enough to where the reflection of the laser was literally bouncing on the inside of my mirror 3. So it kept either hitting a nozzle or, was just being very intermittent. So I tightened it up, and then I went ahead and I did some more test cuts, and then I noticed that, and Nick, I don't know if you've noticed this ever with your laser, and Josh, you might not have even noticed this because your guys' OMTechs came, assembled and ready to rock and roll as far as the laser hitting the middle of that mirror on 3 that goes into your nozzle. Well, when you're cutting, if your laser is not is close to perfect center, because let's just be real, perfect center is not a thing. We don't have calibrated eyeballs, but from what we can see, center is center. Well, when you're cutting your laser, the laser is not fine until it hits that lens. Well, there's a spot. Okay, it comes down in a cone, and right at the tip of the cone is that focal length, quote unquote. Well, it was cutting off to the side, leaving a more angled cut. So when I ran a test card, it was cutting the circles at like we'll call it like a 15-degree angle. And it wasn't, I was like, what, why? And then I ended up readjusting a bunch of things and eventually I got to cut straight again. All that to say is that laser maintenance is extremely important, not just alignment, cleaning lenses, cleaning the mirrors, cleaning your rails and putting 3-in-1 on all of them to make sure everything's lubed up, but also checking that the hardware is tight. So I remember talking about Jen at Jen's Turn's belt tensioner when it was loose. Well, should have taken my own advice and checked my mirrors because that was ultimately what caused the issue. But now, since that issue occurred during one of these other jobs, the laser engraving is not very great. So I let the customer know, hey, I'm going to black epoxy this free of charge. So that way it looks nice and I don't have to rerun the job. So that's that one. Those two, rather. And then I got one of those Master Sergeant Chevron boxes that's going to go out in June. But I'm making it now because Master Sergeant Chevron boxes have become relatively easy to make. It's the same process. If you guys remember the tanker one I did with the planes on it, there's no planes involved. It's just a strip that goes across it. So all I had to do is edit it, make a bar across rather than shapes, and glued the panel up, and I've just got to cut it now. Other than that, that's what I got going on in the shop as far as jobs are concerned. I learned a lot with the laser. I relearned a lot with the laser because I'd come kind of complacent with certain things, thinking I had everything the way it needed to be. But hey, it is what it is. We all make mistakes. We all learn things. I need to, take a visit down the whole relearning thing. So, yeah, that's what I have going on in the shop. But Nick, what did you have, man? You had something you wanted to say?
Is it possible when you were realigning everything that you just forgot to tighten it down?
Well, no. So it was the mirror ring itself. It wasn't the actual mount. So like the mount itself, I didn't even touch Mirror 2's mount because the Laser 1 or Mirror 1 was hitting perfect center into the second one. So I didn't even think to touch that like mirror or anything at all. I thought it was all from 2 to 3. And then that's when I found out today that the mirror had actually in fact been loose the entire time.
Kind of crazy to think that that's a possibility.
Yeah. So that's just like gee whiz for folks. Like when you're going through and you see certain things, like just check everything. Also, something I did find out, and I just remembered because it was another process I had fixed on my laser. Water temperature counts for something. So if your laser is running a little warm on the cooling aspect, so let's say maybe like 80 degrees, like mine was, your cuts won't be as crisp and they won't be as deep. So after I readjusted and reset my chiller, I set a bunch of settings based on a YouTube video, and I'm sure Josh has seen the same one. It's a guy who goes through literally all the settings. Really, really educational and honestly really easy to follow. But I got it to where I'm at 15 degrees Celsius, which is roughly like 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about the optimal temperature for a laser. After doing that, I noticed how much better my laser was cutting. Like it cuts through 1/2 inch like butter. So it was... Yeah, it was pretty good. So I learned a little bit more on the chilling aspect of using a laser. But that's all I got. That's all I've been doing. Just jobbing away, getting things done. Crunch time will be really throughout this week and this weekend because a couple of these things are due by Thursday. I do have a little bit of news now that everything's good and confirmed. So the wife and company, we're having another baby.
Yeah, man.
So she's 8 weeks pregnant, and this one's kicking her ass. A lot different than how Zane was when she was pregnant with him. But yeah, so we got another one on the way. December 21st is the due date. That was my original due date before I was born, 2 months early.
Explains a lot.
Yeah, I was born in October. Crazy. But yeah, so that's what's going on in Nap's shop, Nap's life, and
awesome. Hey, so I'm going to open a can of worms here, and I apologize ahead of time for the people in the Patreon. But Nap, word on the street is that you're shopping for a Mitre Saw. Wait, let's back up a second. We just kind of bypassed something huge. First of all, congratulations. We'll say this on the podcast. That is huge news, man. And you know what? I'm very happy for you and your family. And just remember, Josh is a very good, strong name. Anyway, moving on.
We don't even know the gender yet, and you're already...
I'm just saying. No. Congratulations, Scott. I wish give you a high five and shake your hand and have a cigar with you, but not going to North Dakota. So maybe someday.
Well, maybe in Illinois. You're not too far away, huh?
We halfway somewhere. Colorado, have a good time.
Yeah, Now getting into this table saw nonsense, okay, or not table saw, miter saw nonsense. So I am in the market for one, but this is the disclaimer. I'm only fishing for info, fishing for what is it? Opinions on the specific miter saw that I was looking at. So I was looking at a Capex, just because of the dust extraction and whatnot. But there are some things that were noted, and I even talked to Nick about it, and Joey left me a comment as well, and I know Victor, he left me one on the story that I had. So a lot of the things I've gotten was, if price isn't a factor, it's a good buy. Okay, I can agree with that, right? Because the Capex it's not cheap. Okay, it's not. And a lot of folks in the maker community, when they hear Festool, Capex, any of their tools, they automatically think it's awesome, because Festool is, one of those top brands that a lot of makers have in like the sanding aspect of things, and even the domino, because the domino is also very popular amongst many makers that I've seen anyways, through reels and whatnot. However, there are some other ones out there, and Josh brought some good ones, and Nick actually brought one of them as well. The Delta Cruise is in there, and then you got the Bosch with its that super glide system or whatever it is. It's got like that really weird looking arm. It's not like your typical extrusion bars. It slides back and forth. I'm looking for something in that design, because I would like a miter saw that I can put on a miter station rather than a stand that I currently have my DeWalt on. That the dimension or depth of that saw is the back of the saw. Like, I can do a full cut and push back, and it's up against the wall type deal. That was something that I found to be a little more important, considering when it comes to like dust extraction and all those things. I want something that's going to have the dust boot, that's stationary, that's actually going to do its job. Because let's just be real, DeWalt and any of the ones that have like the little plastic tube that's not even a solid tube, it's not really great for dust collection, and it makes the most dust in my shop. Like, every time I cut with that damn thing, I got I might as well wear the respirator for the entire day I'm in there, because that dust is it's everywhere. So yeah, I'm in the market for one. It's not like I'm going to buy it now, because the one I have, my current table or my current miter saw works, but it is used for mostly just like chop saw type stuff, dimensioning wood. I was told, told that unless I'm making a lot of like fine cuts or dialed in perfect cuts, like the Capex may not be the route if I'm just chopping things down. But also having the option might not be a bad thing, because the Capex only has like they said it's like a half inch of deflection when you bring it all the way out, and when you push straight down, if you like give a little pressure left and right, you get that deflection. The Bosch has a lot more play, as well as like there's a tab on the bottom, and the disc that it sits on is plastic, but it's reinforced according to Josh, because Josh, that's the one you have, right? So from that, the Bosch, what are some of the things you like about it when you were doing your research, and like what made you decide to get that one minus and not the DeWalt or Delta Cruiser?
So
or Cruise or whatever it is.
When I was looking at upgrading my miter saw, the Capex did come into play in the very beginning. And like I explained to you, Nap, is I was looking for capability. Dust collection is definitely a positive note on the capability front, but I know there's ways to kind of help that along with your setup. And I wasn't searching for such a good dust collection system that it was going to take away from the capabilities I wanted. And for me, I was doing a lot of slabs and stuff, so I needed something that was going to cut, a pretty wide board, if you will. And I wanted something that was accurate, and I wanted something that I can kind of tailor, to what I was doing at the time. Because our shops are ever growing. We're doing new things. It seems like every couple months we dial down something else. And I wanted not to limit myself with the Capex, which by far it's a great miter saw. It depends on what you want to do with it. So I digress and go back into the Bosch. So when I found these two really great miter saws, and the Cruiser and the Bosch seemed to fit pretty much what I was looking for. Now I was really dialing in on like what was the differences between the two and what I was looking for, which one served that purpose better. Now, the Delta was definitely up there on when I was deciding, but I started looking at the Bosch more and more because the pull out on the sides, there's a surface area to that. And they go, I don't know the actual measurement, but they go, like almost 12 inches or a little bit more. So that gives you some more stability. And that right there it's metal. It's very well made. I went to the different hardware stores and I checked these out before I bought one. So I kind of was able to play around with them, check them out, and see how they were built. Now, the Delta Cruiser, I think it's just a wire that comes up. There's not really a surface area, which, I didn't have a table or anything crazy. I kind of rely on the pull-out section on both sides. So that was part of that decision factor. There are plastic parts that are included on the Bosch. And so is a Cruiser. But they're really thick. If you're in a 3D print, it's almost like 100% infill. They're not light parts. And that's the particular part that you're talking about is only to miter to the right. I think it's right or left. It unlocks one portion, and then in order to lock the other half, you have to actually unlock it some more, adjust it, and whatnot. It's a feature to keep it so that it's sturdy and allow you to, operate one side or the other. The dust collection, it's a miter saw. You're right. If you don't have it hooked up to a shop vac or a Festool dust extractor or a dust extractor, you're going to get quite a bit of dust. I find when I have the shop vac, which I use for my miter station, hooked up, I get dust, but it's nowhere near as bad as a traditional DeWalt or what have you. It's not the same as Capex, granted, but again, there are ways to kind of help with that. And I was talking to Nap, and what I told him was essentially my next duty station for that station, I'm going to have a hood, which is going to catch anything extra. I'm going to have suction going from the original port, and I'll have a bottom piece that connects to my dust extractor, my 4-inch pipe, and basically pull from there too. So like I'll be able to capture a good majority of that dust. Now, are those a few extra steps past the Capex instead of just hooking up a dust extractor? Absolutely. But the cutting capacity of the Bosch outweighs, I believe, the Delta, the Capex. I can go miter left or right. It locks into designated degrees, and you can dial that even down and lock it down with a twist of the handle. And far as like cuts all the way through like a long width, I haven't seen much deflection at all. One of the things I did when I first got that saw is, I don't want to say practice, but I was very careful about how I was pulling back and down, utilizing the saw, because I was training myself to ensure that I minimize that instead of just, contracting it. Like, better way to explain that. But I was careful. And now I got the movement down. I don't see, any deflection by my eye or my measurements. Overall, the only thing I really upgraded was I have a zero clearance insert that I made. I replaced that plastic piece in there, and that's about it. And that says a lot, because my last miter saw, I went out to town for his upgrades and trying to get that to be dialed in. But that's my experience with the Bosch and why I went with it. The Cruiser's just as good. I hear nothing but good things. But in the end, the Bosch has fit my needs better. So.
What about you, Nick?
I have the Capex. So.
Well, yeah, I know, but based on what you've heard, have you found any limitations with your Capex with what you do? I mean, do you use it for accurate miters? Do you do anything else but like kind of like chop saw type thing with yours?
Sometimes. Depends. It's really relative to whatever project I'm working on. And if I can get... So my table saw only goes about 3 inches tall with the blade for a 10-inch blade above the surface. So if I need something that's to be beveled or mitered that's taller than that, I'll go to the Mitre Saw. And I know with the Festool that those things are made for more precision than like a DeWalt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get less blade deflection on that. It is a 10-inch blade. You're not going to find a 12-inch blade though. I don't think. I don't know if they came out with one or not.
No, I've been honestly, that was one of the things I looked for. I was like, where is the 12-inch one?
but it's compact enough to where it's like there's obviously it takes up way less space than like a job site miter saw.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Like, okay, so we got, we're talking about the accuracy, amount of deflection, dust collection, price, right? But also the space aspect is a huge thing. Another thing I found, and I watched a lot of YouTube videos too, just because what better way to educate yourself but watch a bunch of YouTube videos and things based on other people's thoughts. And another part of it was weight. So they're like, yeah, the Capex is relatively lighter compared to, let's say, a Bosch, a Delta, or even, hell, even the DeWalt. That thing's a freaking beast. Well, in my case right now, I don't move it as much, but I'll tell you what, when I didn't have that stand that my DeWalt currently stands on, I had to pick that damn thing up all the time, put it up on a table.
Well, yeah. In that case, you're looking for something light and compact. But, it's like I said, what are you going to be using it for is basically what you're going to need to nail down. And then, honestly, I'd figure out if it's going to still be something that needs to be lightweight. I didn't buy mine because it's light. That thing is heavy, awkward to carry and move. But, honestly, I wouldn't go back and buy another one. If that means anything to anyone, there is no regrets.
It does mean something, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to go buy another, miter saw right away, if at all, in the near future. But like Victor in the chat here, he said it sounds like all the points we had made were for the Capex was the space, dust inaccuracy, and whatnot. And then, I responded with like, what's the best bang for your buck? And then he comes back with the only real question is, what are you going to be using it for? And well, I've answered that. I use it mostly for dimensioning and, just cutting boards down. So like the Capex, is it a now thing? Probably not, based on just answers and whatnot coming back to me from not only Instagram, you guys and whatnot. But it could be a later thing. Who knows?
If I had more money in a bigger shop, I would have the Capex for, knocking down straight cuts for the smaller stock, and then the larger Bosch for pretty much everything else. If that, that's not, the Capex is not, not in the horizons. Like, I would love to have one. But, if I had a big enough shop, I definitely would have that just set up for, most of the, quick 90-degree cuts. And that way, the dust collection, all that serves that purpose. And then for everything else that's wider or something I can't do with the Capex, I would have able to use the Bosch. But now we're talking about, shop, how much space you have, money, because you're talking about I don't know, it's like $1,600 with two of those saws.
Yeah. So. One other comment I wanted to bring up was from Greg over at Hiltz Builds. And honestly, he goes, how much fine cutting do you do with a miter saw? I said, table saw sled is cheaper and more accurate. Which it can be, right? And I do use table saw stuff for a lot of my miters. It's funny, miter saw used for miters and things like that in the name, but table saws tend to typically be a little more accurate, which I use my Incra miter jig and other jigs that I've made to make cuts. So yeah, I'd say my next table saw will probably, I can't say it'll be a Bosch. Okay, I won't make that determination until I obviously go check out Acme Tools, because they literally have all of this that we're talking about right now. I just got to take a trip there and just kind of see how I feel about it. Yeah, I'll go play with the saws. But I got to get through learning my new machine coming in soon. I haven't got an update recently. I'm supposed to see it sometime this month, so I'm still preparing for it. Thus, the reason why I'm trying to knock out a lot of these jobs, because I'm ready to commit time to learning that particular machine. So we'll see what happens. It's not a now thing buying a Mitre Saw, folks. It was just me probing for information, answers, what the opinions were of everyone else as far as that. And honestly, everyone brought a lot of good stuff to the table, other than, oh yeah, buy it because it's a Festool product, So and it's funny, I didn't get a lot of that, which was nice. There was a lot of good feedback given from all the makers that responded. So I appreciate y'all on that. So not a bad can of worms there, Josh. It was that could possibly help someone out there because a lot of the newer makers out there, again, they see Festool and they're like, oh, that's awesome, and then they drop a whole freaking car payment or house payment on.
Well, not to dive down this rabbit hole, but I mean, like, it's like woodpeckers. Okay, when I first started, like, to own woodpeckers was a big deal because, like, all the really good makers I was following were using this stuff, and like, I did pick up some. I still have some to this day. I utilize it. I enjoy them. But there are other brands that are cheaper and they're just as good, and they don't get highlighted enough. So, influencers, Instagram, all that is a real thing, especially when you don't have the knowledge past what you're seeing. That's part of the podcast is us to do, allow people to understand that, we're using this because of this, whatnot. And I believe Festool is one of those names where everyone just automatically, that's the best of the best, head straight for that. And they're dropping down paychecks, when, eventually it's great to have that stuff. And if you can afford it, great. But there are other options out there and they might serve you better in the long run or even the short run if you do your research like you are. And you might end up with a saw that you're completely happy with. So,
well, what's funny is like anybody that buys an expensive tool, like for example, a woodpecker square, you drop it, you're like, no! It's like you got like the epic music in the background as it slow-mo falls to the ground, and you're just like, no!
I bought one of the ledge rulers, 36-inch, and I did something. I was blowing out the shop, and it fell off the wall and nicked a corner. And like, I felt sick because I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm rethinking my entire life because a ruler fell off the wall and I'm like, there's something not right with this whole thing. So I like woodpeckers. I like their tools, but I don't even open their emails anymore because like I said, I can find the layout tools I need and stuff. And if I really need something for woodpeckers, I'll wait for a sale, but their prices are just a little above a little above my level at this point in time. I'm not going to spend that much when I can go ahead and save that money and buy a tool or something that could help me in the shop. So,
I was going to buy a tool the other day, but I decided against it. No, it was you ever hear it? Well, actually, yeah, it was a sybian. What? For the shop. For the shop.
Yeah, Nick, no. Absolutely.
You can't write that off, man.
You can definitely write it off.
Anyways. Hey Josh, so about your lightburn tutorial, bud, what you got for us today?
Nap came up with a great idea. We're going to do just the tip of the week, what have you. And we're going to talk a little bit on the podcast. We're going to post it in our Instagram, and I think he's going to post on YouTube. I might just be throwing that out there. I'm not sure. But this is intentionally to help you guys out. The podcast is great. You get to see what's in the shop. We talk about that. We talk about, how we fix things, our tools and stuff like that. But to visually be able to show you some of the programs and the stuff we're doing, this is how we're going to meet that intent. Because, we're already recording. It just works really well. So this month, the month of May, we are actually going through lightburn. And he did a great tutorial last week. And if you haven't heard it or haven't seen it, you can check it out on the Sawdust Nation podcast page. It was really well done. And I'm kind of nervous to follow that up, but we're going to go ahead and give that a shot. So today we're going to go through one of the most used features in lightburn for myself. You're probably less used than lightburn. Anyway, if you're not a Patreon, you need to be. Anyway, So if you don't know and you're just getting into laser work, Lightburn is a great design software as well. Is it meant for that? Probably not. But I actually designed a lot of my CNC work, of course my laser work, and pretty much anything I do starts with Lightburn. And some of those features that I'm going to show you today kind of help with that, and that's one of the reasons that I am going to show you. Now, there's other programs out there that do the same thing, Inkscape and such as that, but I find that Lightburn is just a one-stop shop, and for the most part, 85% of the time, I can get the stuff I need out of there. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen, make sure I share the right one because that might be embarrassing. So, let's see here. I don't want to share a tab. I want to share a window. Stand by. I'm going to let this populate here. What you're seeing is a current project I'm working on. Someone needs a plaque done, and last minute, like always, they're like, hey, we'd like this patch on there. And I'm like, well, that wasn't really part of the price you paid, so we had to negotiate. And so now I'm designing. Okay, so they gave me a JPEG. I've already imported the JPEG into Lightburn. So if you don't know how to do that, reach out to us. We'll show you how. You could literally drag and drop. And as you see, it actually imports as an image in my layer over here. It's 02. That's the red layer over here. And this is what the JPEG looks like. Now, what we're going to do today is actually trace this and make it into SVG. One of the most useful features I find in Lightburn. A lot of people don't know about it. Some people do. I think all three of us utilize this constantly. So now you can go ahead and go up to tools and you have adjust image, which might help your tracing. But for today's purposes, we're going to go to trace image. And I'm going to go ahead and push a layer that I already have as fill. And that's going to be the SVG that I just made from that JPEG image. Now, I personally, like I said, I've already kind of done this because I was working it earlier. And later on during these, the Lightburn month here, we can get into tracing. Now, this is the filled image that I originally had and what was pulled. And this is what I messed with and created the lettering and then outlining to create this image on the left-hand side here. And that's what I'll be engraving. So it's anything that you see that is blue is going to be engraved. Anything that is white is going to be not engraved. So we'll have some nice contrast with that piece of wood in that project. But yeah, that is my tip for you. Hopefully that could fit into your schedule and it helps you out. And you can export these too by just going to File and Export. And that will export SVG to your desktop or wherever you want it. So you can go ahead and utilize it in another program or send it to a friend. So thank you for my TED Talk.
So one thing I can say, Josh did a really good job with doing the tracing function, and luckily that patch they had was relatively easy to trace, yes. I will say. So the higher the resolution your images, I found, obviously you'll get the better trace. But one thing I've noticed, and Nick, you might have done this a few times because we didn't always get the best images from one of our biggest customers when I was in San Antonio with him. But we'd get like these super pixelated images. Either A, well, one, you could just cheat and have someone make it for you, or B, you spend the time and you make layers. So Josh is able to get a real good image right out the gate, which is optimal. But sometimes you'll get it to where you have to run multiple traces. So if you've ever used like Inkscape, there is a function in there where you can literally do like 5 or 6 scans and it'll give you 5 or 6 layers and you can pull it apart and you can, put your image together. Well, I do the same thing in Lightburn. I'll trace multiple times until I get my desired results or desired results for particular portions of it. But I've also been able to piece images together, like find stock images online, yep. And like trace and align on the patches. So that's another function also as well. Like, don't be discouraged if you don't just get that first trace because it doesn't always happen that way.
Nap, if you like, I can go ahead and kind of show you a little more detailed of that final image. That way they can kind of understand some of the layer functionality you're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and click and share this right now.
What do you have, Nick, while he's getting that pulled up?
So I don't use the trace function on Lightburn. I either use Inkscape or I outsource. And when I outsource, it just costs the customer, and it takes a lot of the stress off of me.
I find that like the more I've done it, like I have a couple of programs I utilize. Inkscape is great. It definitely can do. It's a powerful program, but I start here and then I work my way down the line, and it doesn't take me long. Like this all right here, this patch right here, took me about 5-10 minutes. And you saw what I was working with. It was a good quality, but originally I did go into the tool functionality here, or the edit, and no, I'm sorry, tools. And I did adjust the image. I messed with the contrast and whatnot so that I had a better image quality than what I at first had. So there's a lot. This is a powerful program, a lot of features. And once you start learning it, it becomes a lot faster. And I actually still charge a design fee, the same fee that I would charge for someone else to do it. But I get to pocket that now because I got this down to a science. So it's really up to you what you want to do. But yeah, multiple layers for that single patch, and I'm happy with the results. I'll be laser engraving that this probably tomorrow. So
good work on that.
Thanks. We have about one more tutorial on Lightburn, and then we could change it up and do something else. But I think this is a good start. We talk a lot about lasers and designing. So I think that hopefully that helps someone out there. But if you'd like to, man, we can go ahead and wrap this up and, call it a night.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Sounds good, man. I sound like the guy that works at Jalisco. Sounds good, man.
Sounds good.
Do you want what do you say, the chorizo on that?
It's fun. Nap, take it away.
But yeah, folks. Hey, so we're hoping that these tips of the week are going to help you all. Obviously, themes are going to change as the months go on. We will revisit Lightburn, right? Because this is just 2 or 3 tips, and we just started this.
Yeah. It's
so
just
later on, if you all have requests, if you have more requests for Lightburn tutorials or how-tos, I've been using the program for at least 3 years. Josh and Nick probably roughly 2 years ish.
Yeah, 3. I had a diode laser. I started using it.
Oh, that's you had a diode before,
and the glow.
So disregard. They probably had it roughly the same amount of time I have. But we've not learned everything, right? Oh. So if there's something that you ask, I'm going to research it. I've learned more functionality of that particular program over time. But I get a lot of that from the community and from YouTube and all the other makers out there that have done these things. So that way we could put it in a way that not only we can understand, but hopefully the newer user or even intermediate users use when they go through the program itself. All that to say is just keep helping each other out, keep learning, and just keep making this community stronger. Nick.
Okay, so as far as next week goes, you guys are going to be ready for my tip? Just the tip? Just for a second?
I'm curious what you got.
Just to see how it feels. I have a doozy, man.
Which one he's going to find?
So I have a doozy. We're gonna talk about embedding pieces inside of other shapes, but taking shapes and bending the nodes to your will.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah. So with that being, because I do it all the time. If you see any of my acrylic work where I have things inside of things, you know what I'm talking about? Things inside of things. That means I had to go in there and do it myself because I took one image. And if you take one image and put it over top of another image, you're going to have all the lines all together. So we'll get into that next week. But with that, I just want to let you know to keep making sawdust. And these are our final thoughts.
Clearly, you don't have any.
Oh, no. Take care of yourselves and each other. And rip Doyle Brunson. Rest in peace.
Anyway. Thank you for listening to the 151st episode of Sawdust Nation Podcast. We're really hoping that you enjoyed this new segment. If you let us know, get a hold of us. If you want to learn how to do something, just go ahead and write us, drop in our DMs. Thank you for PWN CNC for sponsoring us. And with that, get in your shop, make some sawdust, and Sawdust Nation Podcast out.
Say Sawdust Nation out.
Sawdust Nation out.
Yeah, high five.
Awesome, man.
All right, buddy. Night.
We'll be using that one.
There's child labor laws, by the way.
Hey, listen, as long as he's an employee, I can pay him a nominal fee. We're good.